Hello everybody. We have to make a build for the beta and for the expo. So let's go through how we're going to do that. We're going to look at editing the scene build order through the scene manager, editing the player settings and looking at how we can add some details to that. Making the folder for the build to live. Remember that whatever we need to run needs to be in the source and repos folder, otherwise it will not execute. Making sure we can create the build and then going through common issues you're likely to encounter, because if everything's been working up to this point but you've got a bit of code that hasn't been needed, but it may well be needed at this stage. So that's when it will get detected and that's where the problem will occur. So how we can solve those kind of things. So let's start. I've got a small project which is set up here. There's not a huge amount to it, but what it does have is 3 separate scenes. A main menu, which looks a little bit like this. The game, which looks like this. And then a windscreen, which currently looks like this and isn't particularly exciting. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure we edit the scene build order and that it's in the correct order that we want it to be. So I'm going to go to File and Build Settings, and we need to make sure that our main menu is the first thing to load, followed by our main game, followed by our windscreen, and obviously loose screen or whatever else you may have in your game. If the order is wrong, you can just grab it and move it around. We want our main menu to load first, and then we want our main game to go after that. So that's our first bit. That's how we edit our build order. It is absolutely important. Ooh, where's my PowerPoint? Really important you get that correct, otherwise when you make your build, it'll load the wrong thing. You will fail your qualification if the game loads and it takes you straight to your windscreen or your loose screen or a scene that is unplayable. So make sure it's the correct order of things. Now let's look at the player settings and how you can customize your project even more. So if we go to File and Build Settings, same place where we just were, you can go to your player settings, which are here. Sometimes this may be a bit maximized or minimized, but it'll look a little bit like this. Things to keep in mind. If you want some extra brownie points for customization, our company name is not Default Company. It is Hellzone Games. That's who we are. Capital H, capital O, with a space for games. The name of your product. What is your game called? This is the name that we'll see when you come to actually make the game itself, when it pops up next to the icon. So whatever your product name is what we're going to call it here. So I'm going to call this VR demo game. Exciting. Obviously you've got your name, and the version number matters as well. Not hugely, but it's a good way of you keeping tabs of the number of builds that you have made. Your game will be in version 1 only when you come to submit it for the expo. So version 1 should be the last thing that you make. Up until that point, you can have your own naming conventions if you want to, or your own numbering conventions. So version 0.1 might be your first one, then 2, then 3, then 4, and you can just keep going, you know, until you get to a version that you're happy with. If we got major and minor versions, we would also do cleverer stuff with it, but we're not too fussed for now. You can change your icon, which is the icon that you'll see. I'm just going to pick a different icon for now. Oh, let's just pick this padlock. Obviously, if you've got a different picture that you want to be the icon for your game, you customize it there. Then you've also got the icons in here, and you can see that it pulls that default icon into here. That's what it will be on different games. If you wanted to customize it, again, customize it, and that will be the icon that will be for your game. If you've got your custom one, just add that to your asset space and then you'll be able to pull that through there. The only thing that you have to set if you've got an image, just going to pick on these things, you have to make sure that the texture type is set to Sprite 2D in UI and you press the apply thing, otherwise it won't appear. It needs to be set as a sprite for 2D and a UI. So back to our player settings, that's how you can customize your icon. Your resolution and presentation, there's some settings in here you can change as well. I'm not too fussed about that, but you've got your splash image. What do you want the player to see in virtual reality when it's loading? At the minute we see kind of like a weird white and black zigzag line. You can again change that to be whatever you like while the player is loading. Find something that is appropriate. I don't know, a thumbs up in my case, but something relevant for your game. And this is what it will look like. Ooh, let's minimize that so we can actually see it. So you get made with Unity, that's what we'll always see at the very, very start. And then in VR, you'll see that little thumb pop up as well. But you can customize that if you want to. You can add some custom logos, and then you've got other settings as well, which I don't think we need all that much here. But once you've got all of those things set up and you're happy that you've customized it and you're really, really happy, you go and make a build. So you choose build and then you go and put it somewhere. I don't want you to put it in the same location as your project. So in my case, my project is called VR template, blah, 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 dash copy. If I put it in there, you'll just end up with a bunch of builds taking up space in your project. So what I instead recommend is in source and repos. You make a new folder, you call that whatever the name of your game is, dash build. So I'm just going to call mine VR demo dash build. And in my case, I might also write beta if it's the beta. I might write final. I might write V1, or I might just leave it like that. A folder, which is just a way of holding all this data together. So you create that folder, make sure it's selected, and you choose select folder, and it will go and create a build. If you have coding problems in any of your scripts, whether you are using it in your game or not, it'll tell you about it now, which is why it's important you start making regular builds and testing it as a build rather than just pressing play, making sure the build order is correct, making sure it works as expected, and all of those other settings are obviously working as expected. It'll take a while, depends on the size of your project, but anywhere between a minute to 5 minutes, 10 minutes is unlikely. Depends on the size of the project that you've got. What it's doing is it's taking all of your assets and compacting them down, putting them in a thing that will be quick to load, but also very, very small. So while we're waiting for that to do, there we go, it's loaded quickly. And you can see that it's got the custom icon, which I gave it, which was that little plus icon. And it's got that custom name, which is VR demo game, and it's got the exe. And you can see the actual exe itself is tiny, under 0.5 MB. That's not the entire project because the actual stuff is in this data folder, and you can see all of that. So just to show you how much it's compacted this down, if I select all, right click and go to properties, you'll see that it's taken this entire project and has collapsed it down to no more than 204 MB. When you come to submit your project to the Expo, this is what you send. So the first thing that we do is we check obviously that it works, the build order is correct, and that it works as expected. So I expect to see my main menu first, which is in headset what I see. Mine's just quickly reset itself. I need to re-establish the quest link. But you get the idea. So it is obviously really important that we test regularly. Mine's just had a bit of a moment because it can't find my headset. But you can see that the main menu, the main game, and then the win and any lose that you've got. But that's ultimately what it's doing. It's compacting it down. If you are happy with it, you are never going to have one build. You're not going to do it once and that's enough. You will end up making lots and lots of builds. And it's really important that you number them, that you name them. Otherwise, you'll get lost with what you're working on. So when you're happy with your build for the Expo and you're coming to submit it, I will tell you where it needs to be submitted. It will be made very, very available as common knowledge. Probably won't be to Moodle, it will probably be to Teams, but we'll tell you more as we get close to the Expo. But you'll have your folder, you'll right click and you will use 7-zip to compress that. I've just got WinRAR or compressed to zip. So I choose 7-zip because 7-zip is basically bulletproof, but I don't have that installed right now, so I'm just going to compress. No, I don't have 7-zip installed, so I'm just going to go to use regular zip for now. Obviously that will compress it, and that's what you will submit. And see how quick that was to zip up and compress. It was absolutely rapid. Now you could leave it there, and when it comes to the Expo you could submit that, but my level of paranoia tells me that what I would always recommend is find a buddy's machine, send it your buddy on Teams, get them to extract it and get them to open it. That's what I would recommend. So obviously when you extract it, you'll end up with something like that. Get them to test it, get them to play it. Is it the correct build order? Does it run? Is the height correct? Have you forgotten to replace the standard camera with the like I've got in the case for my main windscreen here, I've got just the standard main camera. That's not going to work, that's not going to be good. It should instead be replaced with the XR interaction setup, is what I would expect, because that works in VR. Can your player walk around your main menus, and is that desirable? Is that the behaviour that you want, or do you want them to be still? Or how can your buddies exploit your game? Because if they can exploit it, someone else will at the Expo. So testing is absolutely critical. And every time you do a test, you document it in your testing table. So we've looked at editing the player settings, making the folder in source and repos, making that build and testing that build. And then the last step, which is common issues. The most common issue that you'll encounter, which is difficult for me to force, because everything in here works, but if you've got a half-complete script, so I'm just going to deliberately break this script here. If I wanted to go and make a build, it's going to override the one I had previously, which was VR demo build. Actually, no, let's do good practice. There you go, version 2, so I know that this is different. I'll make a build, select that folder. Build completed with a result of unknown. It's got a console. I've got an error, I've got an error, I've got an error. It will not let me make a build until that script is fixed. It also, even if you've got scripts that are complete but it can't compile for whatever reason, you'll get an error instead that says build completed with a result of failed. So be very careful to read the console to actually see what messages you get back, and to make sure that it is building, and then you test it, send it a buddy, they will test it for you, I am sure. That's everything for me. Hopefully that's set you up for an effective build and demo for the betas and the expos. As always, if you have any questions, give us a shout.